Okay, so here we are. We're live and we're here with Karen Newton, and we're going to get to know a little bit more about Karen Newton. And my goal here today is to introduce you people to Karen and get to find out a little bit more, maybe something you don't know about Karen, but also get to understand the choices she made in life and why she is where she is, and part of her journey to get there. So Karen, by the way, just in case that you don't know anything about Karen, Karen is the founder of Karen Newton International. She's the founder of the 2 Pound 73 Club, Book Top Publishing. She has written a number of books that have been published in many different countries and available in many different countries. So Karen is somebody who actually does what she says she does. She's a wealth coach. She teaches people to go from zero to millionaire. And I could keep going because there's so much to the accolades to who this lady is and what she does and what she's achieved. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a conversation with Karen here. And we're going to ask Karen a couple of questions. So Karen, you're very welcome, by the way.
Thanks, Pat.
Right.
Looking forward to it, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll go easy. We'll go easy, right? But I guess we're starting. Well, why don't we get people to get to know a little bit about you? We want to get to understand you, who you are, where you come from. So tell us a little bit about Karen, or where you came from, or where you grew up, and part of your journey there and your life there. What was that like?
Okay, so I was born in London, and my dad was a professional soccer player. And so he was based in London. And in those days, they didn't make the kind of money that professional players make today. So he was a milkman. He had one of those little three-wheeler trucks that went around the streets of London delivering milk. And when I was 5, or just before I was 5, my parents moved down to Wales. My dad transferred to another soccer club down in Wales, and we moved down to Wales. So I was brought up mainly in Wales, and my mum was Welsh, so she was quite happy to get back home. And yeah, it was one of those eras. I suppose, don't like giving my age away too much, but it was just.
So it was one of those eras where obviously professional soccer players didn't get paid, right? Or certainly didn't get paid enough because they had to keep a second job.
That's right, yeah. And I was in that era where you were expected to get married because you were a girl. You expected to get married, have kids, look after the husband. But I was lucky I had a mum who didn't believe in that, so I got a totally different kind of education.
When you say we have a different type of education, what kind of people were your parents in terms of their
Uh,
belief systems?
Basically, it was you go and do whatever you want to do, and don't let anybody tell you you can't do anything. So it was very much I was allowed to try different things and find sports that I wanted, or just try things, and I always had full support. And then when I found that tennis was a game that I absolutely loved, and when that became my sport that I was playing, um, the support that my parents gave me was just phenomenal, because I had decided that's what I wanted to do. I was going to be a professional tennis player, and yeah, the support just came like anything. So yeah, they were amazing.
Because it means a lot, I guess, as part of your progress, even as a child. When we become adults, they support, or sometimes they don't necessarily have to push you, but sometimes they just once it don't get in the way, right, and they allow you to become who you want to become. It's a major help. So tell us, Karen, what was your first job? What did you do first? What was your first time earning income?
First time in an income was a paper round. Like most people, I had a paper round. My parents, my mum was very sick and wasn't able to work. So she spent a lot of time in hospital. And for me, it was we needed to have money in the family, and I went and got a paper round. Not just one paper round, I had a Sunday one which paid a lot of extra money, and I was lucky that the shop made sure that I had as much as I wanted during the week. So I had a morning round, an evening round, a Sunday round, and I was actually making so much money off that when I started work, probably 6 or 7 years later, I was on the same kind of money working as I was doing my paper round. So yeah, that was really good.
So you
And
obviously
I went
had a
into I actually left school. I'd stayed on to do A levels, but at the time unemployment was so high in the UK. 1 in 6 people was unemployed. So I applied for a job with the civil service. I actually applied to work in the National Statistics Office and ended up in Inland Revenue. So how I got to Inland Revenue, I've got absolutely no idea, because I was talking all about stats in the interview and got told, "Oh, you've been accepted, but you've got to report to Pontypool Tax Office." So that was how I got into Inland Revenue.
and why? I mean, why did you choose that particular path? Was it just that it was any job, or was it something in particular that you were interested?
Civil service was supposed to be a job for life, and obviously unemployment was so bad at the time that if I thought I had a job for life, then that was I was going to go with. I had been playing tennis and I had intended a professional tennis career, but I had an injury in training which took me out of tennis. Uh, I turned full professional on the 1st of March, and on the 12th of April, I was in hospital for surgery. So my full professional career was just so short,
Short-lived.
short-lived.
Well, you know, sometimes when you look back, you kind of realize, okay, there are certain things that if you continue doing, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing now, right? And
Oh,
so
true. Yeah.
it brings a bit of a change. So on your journey, what was the toughest decision that you've ever had to make?
Tough. I don't think of decisions as being tough. I'm a person that believes that a door closes, another door opens, and one has to close. So I think that I'm always someone that just deals with what comes my way, and I move on from there. I won't say that I ever had a really tough decision that I've had to make.
Okay, so you just keep going regardless.
Yeah, and just adapt to whatever happens.
A great
And that's
attitude to have.
something that a lot of people have said to me is, that I don't see obstacles. I'm always looking for ways to get around things. So I would say I'm just pragmatic and just deal with whatever comes.
So what would you say then was your greatest achievement in life or business?
I think the biggest achievement was learning to walk when I had a car crash, because everybody wrote me off and said, yeah, I wasn't going to walk again.
So tell us
And
what happened. Tell us that exactly. Give us an idea of what exactly
well,
happened.
the car crash, basically, I was driving home from work and a vehicle came through a stop sign. I hit the front wheel, hit my car spun, hit the back wheel, went into a somersault, was hit by another car coming in the other direction. Uh, Woke up 3 days later in hospital, and the police just had to explain to me what the accident was. I still have no memory of the accident. But after 3 months, they basically told me I wasn't going to walk again. I couldn't move my right arm. I had speech impediment, damage with my eyesight. There was barely a bone in my body that wasn't broken. And yeah, they just wrote me off and said, "You're basically where you're going to be." And I wouldn't take no for an answer. I always felt that if I had the right support, I was going to be able to walk. And the number of trips I did to the doctor, and he was, "No, you can't do this. No, no, you just have to accept it." And I said to him one day, "Look, I'm fed up of being told there's something we got to do." And he said, "Yeah, we're going to send you a psychiatrist because they'll help you adapt to being in a wheelchair." And I went to the psychiatrist. First meeting, he said, "Why did you agree to come?" And I said, "Because I want you to go back and tell my doctor what an idiot he is, that if he gives me support, I'm going to be able to walk." And he said, "Oh, come back the following week." And of course, at that stage, you're nervous because you're thinking, is there actually something wrong up here that they want you to go back again? And I went back the second week and he said to me, look, I've got a brother-in-law. He's a sports surgeon. Would you be willing to talk to him? And I said, yeah. He said, I thought you would. He's in the room next door. And I went in. I was in hospital for surgery the next day. And that was the start of getting me to on the track of being able to walk again.
Oh, and so faith brought you to that psychologist then, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Yeah, that he was going to say, yeah, it's all up here. This,
yeah.
But yeah, that was, I always believed, I always had that faith that if I got the right help, I would walk.
But you also knew if you looked for the right help, it'd turn up, right? You'd find it. Obviously, when you continue the way you continue, and look, it's a testament to what you do, even and right now, and your perseverance and determination based on your actual story. So it's back to you can overcome anything, really, right? Would that be right?
Oh yeah, I believe anybody can achieve anything. You've just got to have that belief in yourself, and I think, that's what my parents gave me, belief in me,
So
that
what
I
did it
could go
actually?
do whatever I wanted to do. And for a doctor to tell me I wasn't walking wasn't acceptable.
And what did it feel like when you did walk eventually?
It was quite emotional because imagine the way to describe it is when you've got a young child and they're just starting to learn to walk, you walk backwards and you've got the child in front of you walking. That's what most people sort of do. Right? Only that was me and my husband. He was walking backwards and I was trying to walk forwards. And I managed a couple of steps, and that was, the tears were flowing, everything, because I managed a couple of steps. But then I just went right back down again. I had to go in and have more surgery. It took another effort and quite a while after that to be able to. There was a problem in my hips and my lower back, so I had to have more surgery in there to be able to stabilize. But the fact I'd managed to do 2 steps previously, I knew then that, yeah, I was going to be able to do this.
You mentioned your husband there, and you can, I suppose, let people know his name and maybe tell us what how important was his role, and how important was it to have that level of support when you were going through that?
Ron, my husband's name's Ron. He's a New Zealander. And yeah, Ron is, I suppose, very much like me, that if we want to do something, nothing holds us back. And he knew the determination, and he was as determined as I was that I was going to be walking. And he would sit with a surgeon, and if the surgeon said, look, we're looking at doing this, this, and this, and he'd be saying, well, would it be easier if you did this, this? And I'm saying, no, it's not easier. I don't want to lose this bone or that bone in my body. Leave him in there. Let's go this way. But no, he's absolutely phenomenal for the support that he gives me. It's
So,
a partnership. I mean, we've been together, coming up for our 40th wedding anniversary shortly, so we've been through a lot together and worked together for most of our life. We've worked together, so I think that says the level of support and commitment we have to each other, I think.
yeah, so the importance of picking your team in life as well as business, right?
Yeah.
Probably even more important, because then there's no interference with business. You can strive on and drive on.
Yeah, it's quite funny, one of the stories I tell is like Ron and I have always switched off. Although we've worked together, we switch off. We have a switch off time during the day, and that's our time. And in New Zealand, we used to go home from work and we had a spa pool. We'd soak in the spa pool. That was our switch off time. We never discussed work in the evenings. It was always our time. And I remember one day some guys at work, and it was coming to the end of the day, and they were saying, can you talk to Ron? Can you ask him this? Can you ask him that? And I was saying, yeah, okay, I'll have a chat with him. And of course, I go home. The rule is we don't discuss work. Go back to work the next day. And as soon as I walk in the door, it's, what did Ron say? What did Ron say? And I said, well, I haven't talked to him yet. But you've had all night. Why haven't you talked to him? And it was because We never discussed work in the evening. It was always us.
So how did you end up in New Zealand?
I married a New Zealander. He was
Right,
on.
it's usually the man follows the woman, right?
um, Ron was on a working holiday in UK, and his mate, his friend, I should say, his best mate, worked with my stepdad. So I actually met Ron at his going away party. Him and Matthew were off on a tour of Europe and then going back to New Zealand. We didn't talk. We just made eyes across the table all night, and he came back to the UK. So my mum said to me, "Are you coming around tonight?" Because my parents were divorced and my mum was remarried. And she said, "Are you coming around tonight?" And I said, "No, I've got some stuff on." She said, "Oh, well, Ron's going to be here." I said, "What time do you want me?" And I turned up she said, "I'll come about 8 o'clock." I turned up about 7 and Ron had turned up about 6 o'clock. And again, we didn't talk in the evening because my mum and my stepdad were there. And I just said, "Oh, look, I've got to go. I've got to get up for work in the morning." And Ron went, "Oh, I've got to go as well." So we chatted outside the house. We were engaged about 4 weeks later and 6 months later married.
Oh, and your 40th anniversary is coming up. I think I remember you sharing your goal, what you're going to do on your 40th anniversary. I believe we're going to Monaco, are we?
Yep,
I say
definitely.
we because I was obviously invited.
Yep. And I've booked I've booked my accommodation, I've booked the restaurant. We're off there. We did it for our silver wedding anniversary. We did this big tour. Before we got married, we sat down and we said, what did each of us want from the marriage and what were we wanting for our future? And we made the decision then that we would have our silver wedding anniversary in Monaco, which is exactly what we did. And then we said after that that we would do our 40th in
So,
Monaco as well. So yeah, we're off there.
so what did you do when you were in New Zealand, and what was your career there?
New Zealand, I went into banking, and the bank I started with was it was a brand new bank. It had been operating out of a caravan, and when I started, it had just moved into premises. So it was a really young savings bank. And the day I started, the first ATM machine went in New Zealand. It was in the bank that I was with. And my job was to get people to have cards so they could access the ATMs. But the system in New Zealand was totally different because you had one card, but you could access 10 or 20 different accounts on it. There was little suffix numbers and you used those for the machines. So from there, once we'd got a certain percentage of people onto the cards, I went into the accounts department and I did accounts and then I moved to IT and I was doing all the transition of when you write out a check, it has to be encoded and then it would go through a automated system to deposit or withdraw from people's accounts. So I was doing all that side of it. Then at the time we were moving mortgages from manual onto computers. So that became my job, was to convert all the mortgages. I then went out into branches and I worked my way up through as a teller, a bulk teller, different supervisors. And then I came back into head office where I went into, I worked with Visa, I worked with foreign exchange, and I went back into the lending side, dealing with all the securities and setting up all the contracts and everything for mortgages and things.
So you got a good idea then, and probably a first-hand experience of how to move money and how money works and operates, and
Yeah,
and how the paper trail works really, and managing a paper trail and
yeah.
processing it. Yeah.
It was incredible. I just was there at the right time and for a bank that was growing, and they just let me grow with them basically and move my way through. And when I left the bank, I was a consultant to them because I was the only person that knew how to change interest rates on mortgages and the computer system. So every time there was an interest rate change, I had to go back in and go through all the processes and change everything. And so although I left at a time when interest rates were going up, 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 up. And I spent more time working back in the bank than doing all the interest rate changes, because I do one and I'd have like about 2 days off and I'd be back in doing the next one because the rates had been going up so fast. So although I left, I didn't actually leave for probably another 12 months afterwards before I was finally doing my own thing.
So you had a paid education then?
I'll tell you what, the bank was, the training programs the bank had was phenomenal, because the bank introduced me to goal setting, and they believed in the philosophy that you had to have a goal that would help you set your goals. The bank looked at you achieving your goals, which would help them achieve their goals. And they built the whole philosophy around the goal setting. It was brilliant. And the training they provided, all the leadership training was unreal.
And do you paid for the benefit?
Yeah, it was good.
Fantastic. So tell us, how did you end up back in the UK?
Well, that was quite a sad story, because we actually moved to Australia. Business closed down. We moved to Australia. We were only in Australia for 3 days when my mum died, and we then went over to UK for her funeral. I lost 6 members of my family in 8 months, so we sort of stayed there in the UK. Just saw so many opportunities. My mind was just going, there was just so much we could do there. So we just got stuck in and started making money.
So tell me, how did you start making money? What did you do? This is the career that you're in now, right? The beginning.
Right. So I started off, we had a plan of how we wanted to build a property portfolio. And that plan, we couldn't get a mortgage unless both Ron and I were working. So I'd applied for jobs, and basically it was like I was overqualified for most of the jobs. So I saw this job advertised. It was just doing the admin work in an office, and I thought, it's no stress on me. I can actually do that, and it's not going to be a problem. So I went in with a decision that I was not coming out of that interview until they'd given me the job. Unfortunately, the boss there had the same attitude, that I wasn't leaving until I accepted the job. So I came out of that interview with the job. And that meant that I had enough money coming in then that we could get mortgages to do properties. The business that I was in I was made redundant twice from the job. The second time I was made redundant, I put the money up to buy the business back out of the receiver, so that I still had my job and could still continue doing the mortgages. Ron, because we are part of our business in New Zealand had been fire protection and security, Ron went and got a job as a security guard, and that gave him the money that he needed, and between the two of us we were able to get mortgages. But the mortgage companies would not, the rules at the time was you could only have 5 properties. So we made the decision that we needed to be able to get the properties separately so that we could get at least 10 properties. And I guess that's my banking mind about how do I get around the system. So we set everything up and we started building our own portfolios.
And the rest is history, so to say.
Yeah, so I invested. We arrived in the UK in 2000. The country was just coming out of recession, so we got that momentum, and it took us 4 years to go from arriving in the UK with nothing to being multimillionaires.
Yeah. So you know that that's doable also, and that's what you do now is you teach people how to do exactly as you've done.
Yeah, because it was, I believe in balance in investing. Key is a business. Then you have property. You have what's called what I call digital, and you have cash investments. And if you work within those four categories, there is always an investment that goes up and always an investment going down. And obviously, my philosophy is you buy as low as you can, and then you take the curve of it going up in value. And that's all I did. And I got property. I setting up businesses and building businesses. Um, I invested in shares. I was lucky that the share market was really low. I was getting in and buying shares that were 2p, 3p, 4p, and I was selling them for £4 or £5 as the market was going up. Gold and silver, I got into buying gold and silver when they started accelerating in value. I started trading because they were getting too expensive to buy. So I started trading them, and that just brought the money in. So I just adapted, if you like. Investment wise, you can go so far and then you adapt to whatever the circumstances are. And I just adapted and took advantage of what was available at the time.
So if people were to come, Karen, working with you, what do you do for people right now? I mean, what exactly do you do for people?
Right. So we have a couple of different programs. We have the Zero to Millionaire program, which is a 5-year course where we take people through learning about business, about property, about shares, bonds, and peer-to-peer lending and bullion investing. And we just teach them all the different opportunities and ways to get into each of those categories. And that's a 5-year program. And if you do everything, you come out a multimillionaire at the end of it. Right. The other thing I do is I work one-to-one with clients. And what we do with clients on a one-to-one basis is we look at where they are now, how we customize things to suit them and what their goals are. And then we put a plan together to move the client forward. So some examples of that, I'm working with a client at the moment whose business got absolutely devastated through COVID and all the lockdowns. And we've put a plan together now for her to move her business forward. She wants to do mergers and acquisitions, and we're starting that off with share investing into the type of companies that she wants to get into. But the first focus was we had to turn that business around and make that business profitable. So it's not just really investing per se as sat in front of a computer and looking at what's happening on the markets. It's finding out what the opportunities are and how we turn those opportunities into realities for people.
So you're strategically thinking and strategically planning all the time,
Yeah.
which is crucial, right? Because it's the lack of strategic thinking which normally destroys most businesses and of course most people's goals. But I mean the fact that you apply strategic thinking and then getting a strategy in terms of a plan to move towards it and move with it as it changes,
Yeah.
and that's obviously part of it. So
And it's something you and I have been talking a lot about lately as well,
yeah,
is how important strategic planning is.
yeah. And
But
on your go on.
you've got to be able to assess where you are, and most people have got no idea. So we use a system. I've developed a worksheet that people fill in, and if they fill that in, one, they work out where money flows and how it flows for them, but it also helps identify where they are at the moment and what are the key areas that we need to address. And some people don't realize, they think they're doing all right, but when they see it on paper, instead of having all these positive analytics that we have, they suddenly find they've got negative ones, and that's when the panic sets in. So we sort of calm them down and say, yeah, that's quite normal, now let's move you forward and get those into the positive.
Yeah, it is important to recognize that, because if people are on a journey, particularly if they're trading or are looking for growth, and they feel or think they're growing, and all of a sudden, you know, they get a balance sheet sometime when they're not expecting it, and they're not prepared for it. That's when most people give in too, right? So it's about
And
understanding it's a process. And
and people can say, well, I'm doing this and I'm making that, or I'm doing something else. But when you actually fill it in and you look at it, the numbers wise, and then apply analytics to it, they're actually nowhere near where they think they actually are. Or they can be much better than they think they are. And then we customize it to, okay, well, you're not in that area. We go back to the balance and let's get you in the 4 areas and start working, moving you forward on what areas you're lacking in, so that we've got that balance. And then no matter what happens in the economy, they've always got investments that are performing well.
excellent. On your journey, who were your biggest influencers, your greatest influencers, and why?
Well, I've had a lot. um, I started off when I was playing tennis. Bjorn Borg was mega for me. He came down and
I have his book here. Just I
have
actually
you?
have, yeah, his biography. There you go.
Yeah, he's incredible. He was incredible, and it was just a little thing that he did. He said, "String your racket slightly different," because I was short. I didn't have much strength. That altered the whole thing, moved my game to a whole new dimension. So he was a big influencer playing the sport. Business wise, when my husband and I set up our business, we had no experience of business whatsoever, did absolutely nothing. And so I went to Brad Sugars, who's action coach. He was just starting the business. I met him when he tells the story that he made 1 million. 6 months later, he'd lost it, and then he had to rebuild again. And I met him just as he was starting to rebuild again. And so his business helped us do systems. I actually found that I was very much into systems. I went and got qualifications for ISO 9000, and that's something I apply to businesses now, is how to build the systems and make sure everything's there. So that was like a stepping stone for me, getting me into ISO 9000. Paul J. Mayer, he's of the Leadership Management Institute. He came up with the Wheel of Life, making sure you balance your life out and have goals set in all areas. That basically systemized how I planned everything and how I made sure that I was working in all areas. So that was a major influence for me. Of when I went to doing stuff online and writing my books, there was a guy, Andrew Reynolds. He does a lot of online information products. I went there. I didn't really want to do information products. I wanted to write my books and market those. So I learned a lot of him. And obviously yourself, Pat, because you've been a coach with me now for two, 18,
2 years,
coming up to two
is it?
years.
Oh no, it'll be 2 years in May. You're right, 18 months. Yeah,
So it's quite a long time we've been together now. So, I mean, and the knowledge that you bring, and you help to fill in gaps that I need. And you, what do you say? What's your expression? 2 pats on the back and 1 up the backside to make sure I'm moving forward.
that's it. A kick in the
Yeah.
backside. Yeah, it's interesting because I know Brad Sugars. I had Brad speaking here at one of my seminars, maybe I think about 8 or 10 years ago. Actually more, about 10 years ago. And Andrew Reynolds again. Andrew used to run the Entrepreneur Channel as well,
Mm,
yeah, Andrew. I think Andrew's still operating in the UK. He used to run a lot of big seminars too as a
yeah.
promoter. So yeah, good people to be around for sure. You know. So tell us, Karen, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
Facebook. We've got Karen Newton International. It's one of the Facebook groups. Just go into groups, put Karen Newton International in, and you can get into the Facebook group. And there's also my website, karennewton.co.uk.
Super. So Karen, what's next for Karen?
I've got a business to grow. It's slowly growing. I want it to be international. It We have clients from 13 countries now, so we are getting there. But I'd like to have coaches working in those countries and be able to expand the business a lot further worldwide, because I don't believe there needs to be poverty in the world. That if people got the education and understand how financial investing works, anybody can actually do that.
Okay. So
And
you're looking for coaches, primarily people that you can teach what you do.
yeah,
Okay.
it's all about bringing coaches in, but also bringing the clients in for the existing coaches. So it's a two-prong attack for our business at the moment.
Excellent. So finally, Karen, what are you grateful for?
Me, I'm grateful for the life I have. I've learned so much. I'm grateful for the husband I have. I'm grateful for the education that I've been able to get, and I'm grateful for having people like yourself, Pat, who work with me and support me. I'm grateful for my coaches. I don't know, how long's your interview going to be?
Yeah.
I
Well,
could stay
listen.
for hours talking about what I'm grateful for.
Good. Well, then the fact then that you recognize the attitude of gratitude and how important it is going forward, and it's wonderful to hear your story and to see what you've achieved and what you've overcome, and yet the willingness to consistently persist in future goals and making a difference and making a positive impact in the world. So on that note, we'll wrap up. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to again introduce you to Karen Newton. You will find her at karennewton.com or Karen Newton International on Facebook if you want to reach out. And please do reach out, get your questions answered. And I'm sure Karen will give you 100% commitment of her time to you if you are really truly interested and want to reach out and chat. So
Thank you,
thank,
Pat.
thank you.